Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. I'm in our table tennis room come dance studio, and one day when I take over the world, this will probably be my sewing room. I can only dream. Today I'm going to tell you about this walking foot machine, show you some of the features and how well it actually sews through multiple layers of upholstery fabric, vinyl. Isn't this a beautiful machine? You know that I use a ProSew machine in my studio at the moment. It's a regular straight stitch industrial machine. This is a walking foot machine, so great for bag makers, great for people that work with a lot of upholstery fabric if you're doing furniture and stuff like that. But you can do lighter weight fabric on there as well. It's a mid-range walking foot machine, so there are different types available. They have different features. We've got a computerized touch panel on here, and I'll go through those features as well. The name that you see on here is ProSew. ProSew is an Australian company. They're in New South Wales. Adam from ProSew, he distributes these machines. And I might just mention, I haven't been paid for this. I've bought so many machines through Adam, and I'm happy to do a review on this machine. So if you're overseas, you won't find a machine with ProSew written on it, but the model number is a 1903SX. So if you're in the US or the UK or somewhere else and you like this machine, look for that particular model number. The ProSew won't mean anything to you unless you're living in Australia. Adam from Port Macquarie in New South Wales will distribute these all over Australia, and Peter from near Bendigo in Victoria, he also sells these all over Australia as well. So I'll put the links in the description for both contacts for Peter and Adam, and you can contact them if you're in Australia. And I should be able to get a contact number for you for the US. Stick around and I'll show you the features that I can remember on this machine, and we'll do some test sewing. So I'm going to go through some of the features of the machine. I'll go through the touch panel, we'll do some sewing on it. I'll show you the foot mechanism over here as well, and I'll just explain a little bit about how the walking foot machine works. So let's get this camera set up and we can get started. Before we do that, we'll just step down here. This is our foot pedal here, and we also have a knee lifter here as well. So you can use your foot pedal, your knee lifter, whichever you prefer, and I'll talk about those things shortly. This is a close-up view of how the walking foot works. What you can see here are two separate feet working independently of each other. The skinny one in the middle that goes up and down at the same time that the needle is going up and down is called the needle foot, and then the larger one that's got prongs on either side is called the presser foot. So you can see here the needle is going down into the needle foot, and as the needle foot goes up, the presser foot comes down and runs along the top of the feed dogs, and the presser foot and the feed dogs will then take the fabric and walk that to the back so that the needle and the needle foot can come down in the next motion and make a stitch. What you can see here in this example with the fabric, the needle foot comes down and holds the fabric in place whilst it's doing the stitch. Then that and the needle come up, presser foot come down, and the feed dogs and the presser foot move the fabric along. And that creates a nice even feed for the fabric. Now that we know how the walking foot machine works, let's have a look at the features of the reverse on this machine. So we have a reverse lever here, which is seen on most industrial machines. This one here is a little bit different to the reverse feature that we have just here. So the reverse button is here. This button, just whilst we're at it, it doesn't have any function at all. It's probably something that's there for another model machine. So what we have here is a reverse button here, and we have a reverse lever here. Now this one is a proportional reverse lever. So what that means is that when you're sewing along, if we hit the reverse button on the top here, the machine's going to reverse with the stitches the same length that the machine is set at. Okay, So you'll be able to see that those stitches there are the same size going backward and forward. And if I press this lever here and start sewing, and I'll get back to the needle in a minute, I'm going to press the lever just part of the way and start sewing. And as I go backward, the more pressure I put on my lever, the bigger my stitch length is going to be as it goes backward. At the moment, I've got the lever depressed all the way, and you can see my stitches are a little bit larger there. So if I reduce some of the pressure on the lever, the stitches get smaller, and the less pressure I have on there, the smaller the stitches are, but they're still going in reverse. So that's the proportional reverse. I'm hoping you can see that there. We've got some really tiny reverse stitches along here. Then the stitches start to get bigger again, and then they start getting smaller again before they get larger again. And that's all due to the amount of pressure I've put on that reverse lever. And again, if you're just sewing normally and you want the same size stitch when you're reversing, you just press this little button up here and it'll reverse, giving you the same size stitches that you were doing when you were sewing forward. Let's have a look at some of the features on the control panel here. So when we switch the machine on at the top here, you'll see a whole bunch of lights come up, and this will give you a quick overview of all of the little features that are available on this machine. So it'll be pretty quick, and then some of them will disappear. So there you go, that was all the features that were available with this control panel. So let's start with the basics here. We've got our plus or minus up along the left here. So we can increase the length of the stitch just here. So that 5.4, we can increase the length of the stitch all the way up to 8 millimeters. And again, this button here is your decrease function. So that's pretty simple. Whenever you want to reset your machine back to its normal standard function, just press this button here and it will reset. If you've set a particular pattern for this machine, once you press that, it will automatically revert back to your normal sewing settings. These numbers here are showing you what's happening with your start tack and your end tack. So we've got A and B on the top one, and D, A, B, and C and D on the lower one, and just above the numbers you've got A, B, C and D. So when we start sewing, it's going to do 3 stitches forward and then 3 stitches back, and then we can start sewing forward. On C and D, when we finish sewing, you'll do 3 stitches back and 3 stitches forward, and it'll finish up the sewing. This machine has a thread cutter on it, so when you stop sewing and you heel back on your foot controller, it will actually cut the thread for you, and it will then leave both threads at the back of your work. So you can engage or disengage the cutting feature anytime you wanted to. This plus and minus button here, if you're just in your main screen, you can press plus, and that will increase the speed of your machine. When you first get an industrial machine, it's a good idea to start off slowly. They go so much faster than our regular machines do. And so I do recommend starting off slowly when you first start with an industrial machine. These things go like a bull at a gate. So you can increase that speed to, well, I think it's up to 2200. So 2200 is the fastest it goes, and then you can reduce that probably to 100. So with my speed reduced to 100, I've got my foot on the pedal all as far as it will go, and this is the fastest that the machine will go. Now on the end tack that I showed you just before, if I heel back on my foot controller now, it will automatically go back 3, go forward 3, and then it will cut the thread for me. Now if I speed up the machine, so we'll speed this up, back up to 700, okay there, and we'll go back down here. At the beginning, the machine's going to go forward, back and forward, and it'll go back those 3 stitches that we have it set at. And this, I didn't have my foot all the way down, so it will actually go a lot faster than that. That was as fast as the machine will go at the speed of 700. I won't go any faster. It always scares me when I go too fast. And when I'm ready to finish sewing, I'll just heel back on the foot pedal under the machine, and it'll do those same 3 stitches that I did at the beginning, and it'll finish that at the end. Same size stitches, it'll just go over itself. Or you can change the length of those stitches, which I have shown you already. You can change the amount of stitches you do for your start tack and your end tack. We have our start tack set at 3 stitches forward and 3 stitches back. If we press this arrow button here, that will make that cursor flash. We can press the arrow button again, the next cursor will flash, and so on. So the one that is flashing is the one that you can adjust. Using the plus and minus buttons, we can increase this, and then we can go across. So I don't know what will happen if I do 7 stitches forward and 3 stitches back, so I'm going to try that. Press the arrow again, and I think I'll do the same thing when I end, and press OK. So when I do my start tack, I'll do 7 stitches forward, 3 back. When I end, I'll do the same thing. Let's see what happens. And whilst I'm at it, I'm going to reduce the speed of the machine just to say 400, just for now, just to make it easier for you to follow and for myself as well. So what this machine should do now is 7 stitches forward and then 3 back, and this will all happen very quickly. Then I'll continue sewing as normal. And when I'm ready to finish, I'll heel back and it's done my 7 and 3 stitches. You can just see a single line of stitching here, and then you can see I think 3 lines. So we've come forward 7 stitches, it's gone back 3 stitches. I've continued to sew until I'm ready to stop. Then, so this is where I've come to the end. It's gone back 7 stitches and then come forward 3. So that's your start tack and your end tack. You can set up those parameters to whatever you like. So the maximum number of stitches that you can have going forward or back is 9. So if I want to go back to my regular stitches, I will move the cursor to where I want, reset it, press OK. If you don't want to do a start tack or a back tack, up here you've got the AB button. We'll press that. It's doubled now. What that will do is the start tack twice. So if we have a look over here now, so instead of it doing it forward, back and then forward, it's gone forward, back, and then it's ready to start sewing. Continue on. I'll do the end tack now. And you can see on here, I've actually doubled the amount of times I've gone forward and back, whereas on the end tack, it's still only single. So you can do that for both start tack and your end tack, or you can turn it off completely. So we'll press that and that gets rid of it completely. And if I press that again, that will get rid of that as well. We'll come over here, do a little bit of sewing, and the machine will just sew. And the only way to double your stitches is to use your reverse or to use your reverse lever here. If I heel back, it will cut the thread for me, but it doesn't do any of that back stitching automatically. And then you can just do your half tack as well, and we'll press that again and put that back to the setting that I normally like to have mine at. When you see me sewing on my other machine, I've always got these two features going, and it will also always do that back stitch at the beginning and at the end. And I also have it set so that I always cut my thread when I finish. When you press this button here, on or off, what that does is it either engages or disengages the foot lever. So if I have this engaged when I'm sewing, I can actually heel back on my foot lever and it'll raise the foot here. And if I don't want that to happen, I can turn that off, and it means that I won't be able to raise my foot here when I heel back on the machine. The only way I would be able to raise the foot is with my knee lever or the lever on the back of the machine. You'll see that 0 and the 1 here. 0 is off, 1 is on. So when at the moment it's on, what that means when I'm sewing along, if I heel back on the foot pedal, it doesn't allow the foot to raise. But if I go back and press that button to turn off that lock, I'll come back over here, continue to sew, heel back on the foot pedal, and that raises my foot. Likewise, I can take my foot off the pedal and use the knee lifter. So that's using the knee lifter. So again, I can turn that off. If I press my heel back on the foot pedal here, it won't go up. But if I use my knee lifter, it will do that. I can. This button here allows you to have your foot come up and stay up. If we press this button here, and when I finish sewing, I'll heel back and cut my thread. And you can see that the foot actually stays up for quite some time. So this will stay up, and then you can get your next piece of work underneath it, and eventually it'll come back down again. It's actually a really handy feature, and one I used to use all the time. Sew along, heel back, you can get your next piece of work ready, get that underneath, and after a few seconds, that foot will automatically come down by itself. I do actually really like that feature. So we'll turn that one off for now. This button here is our foot up or down. So as you're sewing, I'll put that feature on. I don't have my foot on the foot controller at all. You can see that both the needle foot and the walking foot have come up when I've stopped sewing. Keep going. It comes up automatically, and this is really handy if you want to pivot your work. So as soon as you start sewing, the needle will come back down again, so you don't have to wait for it to come down. So I can turn the work around and continue to sew. So whilst that button is active, my foot is going to come up every single time for several seconds, and then it'll come back down again. I can disengage that, and in order to bring the foot up, I have to either use my knee lifter or heel back on the machine to raise my foot. So it is a handy little feature to have. So at the moment it's staying down because I've got that feature off. If I press that again, it will automatically come up. And you can heel back and end your work the same way, and your foot just goes back down. I'll disengage that. So this button here is your needle up and down button, and you can see the little icon just here. If you have the needle above that little hash, it means that the needle is going to stop in the upper position, or you can have the needle down in the stitch. That means the needle is going to stop down. So as we sew, you can see that the needle, every time I stop, stops in the down position. If I want the needle to come up when I sew, I'll stop and the needle automatically comes up. So I can do one stitch at a time. Every single time the needle will stop up. And if I want that down again, I'll press that. But in order for that function to work, you do have to start again. So I'll finish my work. And now when I start sewing, the needle will stop in the down position. This little button here is your thread cutter. You can see the icon here. So at the moment when we're sewing, if I heel back all the way on my foot pedal, it will do those back tacks and then it'll cut the thread. If I don't want to cut the thread, I'll disengage that so the icon disappears. I can heel back and it will do those stitches back and forward, but it won't cut my thread. It's a feature that I absolutely love. The thread cutter is probably one of the most important features of any machine that you can get. It's an absolute must for me. I'm so lazy and I do love how it just cuts off the right amount of thread all the time and it's ready to go and start sewing the next time. The thread cutter is something that I always have active. So I'll show you how things work down the bottom here. I've got a nice sexy leg down here to show you. This is your foot pedal here. When you're sewing, you'll press forward and you'll just press forward lightly and continue to sew. And the further forward you go, the faster you're going to go with your machine. When you bring your foot back up to a resting position, the machine will stop. So if I go forward again, I'm just pressing slightly forward with the ball of my feet. Or when I want to raise the presser foot, I'll heel back just a little bit. And that click that you just heard was the feet on the machine raising. So if I take my heel off, that's the foot coming down, heel down, it's a foot coming up, heel up again. So you should be able to see the presser foot on the machine here. So if I heel down just slightly, the foot goes up and so on like that. And if I press forward, the machine will start sewing forward. When I'm ready to stop sewing and I want to cut my thread and do those back tacks, I'll actually press down more firmly with my heel. So what that's done is done the back tacks and then it's cut the thread. And my knee lifter is just over here, so I can use my knee to raise the foot whenever I need to, or I can use the heel on the foot pedal as well. Before I show you the amount of bulk we can get under here, there's a couple more things I want to show you, and that's this feature here. You can see a little knob at the top and at the bottom here, and you'll see this feature on many domestic electronic machines. So the little icon comes up here. What that does is it does a little locking stitch. We can press this again and it'll do the same thing at the end. If you press it one more time, it'll happen at the beginning and the end. So if I disengage the start and end tack, what that's done is a couple of stitches inside at the top, a couple of stitches inside at the bottom, and that's secured those ends in place. You don't always have to use your start and end tack. You might actually prefer to just lock in your stitches when you start and finish. Disengage that. I'll put this back to the settings I like to use. I'm just so used to them. Now, I have forgotten how to use the pattern feature, but these are some of the patterns that you can do on this machine. They're all straight stitch, but they're just different ways the stitches are formed. So this is a pattern button here. You would press that, and that's as far as I can remember. But you can go and sew a couple of stitches together, it'll do a few back stitches, then it'll do a really long stitch in between, the same back stitches again, and so on, and it'll form that continuous pattern all the way along. Likewise here, this will do a triple stitch all the way, just like you would have on a domestic machine. And again here, you'll have a few stitches in between, some back stitches, and so on. So there are lots of different variations that you can use for your patterned stitches. I think that's just about all of the features that I can remember at this point. So let's have a look and see how this actually sews through lots of layers of fabric. I might just mention there is a light switch on the side here, so you can turn that off or on, whichever you prefer. And at the moment, all I've got here is 2 layers of upholstery fabric, which you've been watching me sew so far. So there's certainly no issues sewing with 2 layers of upholstery fabric. I'll double that. And that was 4 layers. How about we try 8 layers? That's 8 layers of fabric that's sewn together. I've doubled that over again, so that gives us 16 layers of upholstery fabric. And you can see as I'm sewing how the foot stays nice and even. So that's 16 layers of upholstery fabric, and that's sewn that with ease. What I'm putting through now is 4 layers of upholstery fabric. And then I'll fold this up. You can see how that's going to have a huge step up. So we're going to go from 4 layers to 12 layers. Then back to 4. And it does that with ease. I'll try and get another 8 layers underneath that. But there we have 4 layers. We've got 12 layers in there. I think we have about 12 there. I did try to get a little bit more, but that's just the way I've got the fabric folded. But you can see how that's just sewing along beautifully. Along the side there, there's no skipped stitches. That's just looking really nice. I'm pretty impressed with how these walking machine feet actually work. I have a couple of strips of vinyl as well. And that just walks over the vinyl beautifully. And that's without even using the vinyl foot. You can get interchangeable feet for this machine. So if you're putting zips on, you can get a zipper foot, a vinyl foot for your vinyl and leather work. And I'm sure there's probably other feet you can get as well. Again, we can sew through multiple layers of vinyl. The limitation that you have with the amount of fabric or bulk you can get underneath here is the clearance that you have underneath here. So as long as you can get the fabric underneath your presser foot, you'll be able to sew through it. So that was 3 layers of vinyl. I've now put 4 layers underneath. And I'll double that over. And you can see even without using a vinyl foot, this is actually working really nicely. So that is 8 layers of vinyl all sewn together along here. That's pretty cool. So the big question on everybody's lips at the moment is, do I want to keep this machine? Well, yeah, of course I do. I really like this machine. I would have liked to have had more confidence or more knowledge when I first started purchasing industrial machines. I was a little bit overwhelmed with industrial machines. So when I heard about them originally, I was a bit scared to go and get one. So I stuck with a regular straight stitch sewing machine. I have 2 of them. I do wish now that I had have purchased one of these. I still love my machines, don't get me wrong. They're perfect for what I do, and because I plan to do more dressmaking and alterations, they're absolutely perfect. The amount of layers of fabric that this machine goes through with ease is amazing. I really do love that. If I were a more professional bag maker, I think I would definitely have to have this machine. It's a really nice machine. I'm not going to keep it. I'm not. I'm not. I'd really, really like to. I just don't have the room. You know how little space I have in my sewing studio? I just can't justify getting another one, so don't even try to tempt me. I would definitely recommend this machine, or any walking foot machine really. They are brilliant. They glide through the fabric beautifully. I love that it just feeds nice and evenly. I'll reluctantly give this machine back to Peter and Adam. I appreciate that I've been able to give it a test run and see how it goes. I do love the machine. If only I had the room for it. This room's pretty perfect, isn't it? But whilst Chris and I are still actively dancing and playing table tennis, this room is going to have to stay our little playroom for now. I hope you've enjoyed this video and seeing what the features are of this machine. It's a really nice machine. I wish I had the space for it. I wish I had the time to do even more sewing than I already do. But I hope that you guys have enjoyed the video and that this has given you a little bit more information on walking feet machines are capable of and how easily they work as well. So I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.